This
Yeah.
area is kicking off the
Oh, yeah, wow, I didn't like an actual class in a long time.
No, anyone is welcome. Up there. Come on down and take your seats.
Yes.
Come in by yourself? Okay.
All right.
Put it in my pocket?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Hello.
You need to do the teacher thing.
Huh?
You need to do the teacher thing. And then say hello, hello. How do we not have an official name tag for you? We need to get an official name tag. You know, I mean, first of all, it would save some paper because you're always around.
Hello, hello. Hello, welcome everybody. Please take your seats. Mr. Mark. Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? Love to see all of you guys here. Welcome to our special reunion of the Harvard Extension Alumni Association. It is wonderful to have you here, all of you. Honestly, it's great meeting you. This kicks off one of the best weeks of my year and my life. Honestly, it's love to see new faces, getting to celebrate each and every one of you. Either you coming as an alum or you're going to be a new alum coming up Thursday. My name is Ariel Gamino. I am the current president of the Harvard Extension Alumni Association, and I have the privilege of leading this amazing group of volunteers. Some of us who are here as smiley faces, and we're trying to do a lot of things. But most of us are just trying to do three things: to connect, to serve, and to celebrate. Connect in events like this with each other, getting to make new friends, see old ones, serve in different capacities, either in the board, local chapters, or different activities that we have for you to volunteer on and to celebrate. Because many of you have done amazing things. All of you have done amazing things. And that is the one thing that I love about coming here, being here, and meeting you. I was talking to Jacob right here, who has like 5 degrees and doing his JD right now. I met a wonderful leader from Dubai who came all the way from Dubai just to this event and to celebrate who we are. And honestly, that's us, and that's you. An amazing community that comes together to celebrate the fact that we are alums of this amazing institution, led by amazing people. And one of the things that I'll say, it's, we love to hear from you. We love to see what you want to do with the association. How can we help you better? Our 5 goals for next year. Number 1, my job as president is to think about who's going to replace me and who's going to replace the board. So making sure we have continuity on what we're doing. So that's our goal number 1. Goal number 2 is chapter expansion across the globe. We are globally expanding. A bunch of our students are not from the US. And we're thinking about how do we create opportunities for all of you who are not in the US to come together. It doesn't have to be a chapter. It could be something else, but at least once a year, if you're in the area of India, Pakistan, Europe, Dubai, how can we come together as a team? Number 3, career support. One of the things that we did this year greatly was to do a career support group out of New York. It's a pilot. People that are trying to transition in different careers get together and basically help each other. And we're trying to do that. And that's my 3rd goal. The 4th goal is to make sure we have a pipeline of leaders, not only for the HEAA, but also for anything else that Harvard might need. Volunteers, and of course, representation on the HEAA level, and why not an overseer one of these days. And lastly, one of the things that we've done a lot is the lifelong learning, which basically that's who we are. Half of our board are either instructors, teaching fellows, or professors. 2 of them teach at the Extension School. That's just to give you an idea of the spirit of learning that we have, which is the spirit of school or lifelong learning. And how do we capture more of that throughout the things that we do, including things like the Learning Together, which is a program that we created 2 years ago to come together as alum and alumni and basically create study groups around a topic. We've done it for 2 years for AI, and it's just been a fantastic way of people just saying, hey, I want to help out. I want to create a study group. Let's come together from people all over the world. So do that more, back to the classroom, bringing professors and students together again in a way that it's a fun way to do it. And of course, just doing more ways for us alumni to either be teaching fellows, or why not just suggest a class for the institution as well. You're going to teach at HES. There should be a path for you to do so, or at least to suggest it. So those are my 5 goals, a lot of things coming up. And again, the one thing that I will ask you is today, a wonderful day that we have today, is if you have any ideas, if you have any questions, come to us. There's a bunch of us on the board here that are happy and willing to help and be part of, you bringing in. And like I said, we're always looking for people to help out. We're looking for a pipeline of leaders who wants to continue what we're doing and get more ideas of it, and keep growing this amazing association, this amazing community, this amazing family that we have. So that's my little remarks that I'll say. Again, my 5 goals, just to get you started and hopefully get you excited about what we're doing, why we're doing it for, and get you involved in it. We have an amazing program today. So we have Dr. Wegner, who's going to give you an amazing talk shortly, and then we have Amanda Pearson to talk about career and at school. And then we have an amazing cruise slated today, which is a wonderful program, and it's a wonderful view of Boston, and it's a great place to talk and to get to know each other as well. But before that, I'd love to introduce one of our greatest cheerleaders, one of our greatest, someone who I really admire, someone who honestly is always behind us on what we do, supporting us, hearing our ideas, telling us some of the stuff that we can help her with, and the institution itself. And I could talk about your credentials, about your PhD from Georgetown, your MBA from VU, but honestly, she's an amazing human being, and it's someone who I'm really proud to have her as a dean, as someone who supports us all the time. So with that, please welcome Dean Nancy Coleman.
Thank you, Ariel. What an amazing introduction. I love this guy. We're mutual cheerleaders to one another. So happy that he is our president and just won re-election. So he'll be with us for another year. So congrats to you. So my job this morning is twofold. Number one is to welcome you to the Reunion 25. As Ariel said, we have an amazing program for you today. And for those of you who are sticking with us for the rest of the week, we have some exciting activities called Commencement coming up. And then I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker this morning. But before I do that, I just want to say a couple of foundational words. Number one, we're so proud of all of you. How many of you are graduating this week? Please raise your hand. All right, congratulations. Yeah. Huge achievement, as everyone in this room knows how difficult it is to have rigorous Harvard study and pair that with your job, with your family, with everything else that's going on in your life. So kudos to you, and we will celebrate you this week in a big way. How many of you have come from a different country? Please raise your hand. All right, congratulations. So I asked that because we might have been in the news recently. A couple of things have been written about us. And I'm going to start my remarks this week with a simple statement. Harvard is a global institution, and we unequivocally support our domestic students, our international students, and the people who walk through our gates. You are all who we are. Our perspectives, the diverse perspectives, the different people that you meet in your program and your opportunities here, that's all made possible because of our highly global faculty, students, and staff. And it is with our dying breath that we will fight this to be able to continue to be a global institution, and it is one of our core values. I've been in the adult education business since 2004 in various capacities. And in 2007, I was in online learning, and I started talking about this concept of global classroom online. And people looked at me and they scratched their heads and they said, "What? That will never work." I'm here because I deeply believe in this concept of global classroom. Global classroom, whether you're learning online, whether you're together in a classroom here with folks from different places of the world, it works and it matters, because that education is how we break down barriers and how we make change in the world, and getting folks together from different countries with different perspectives to talk about these issues is how we do that. So we retain our commitment and deep, deep gratitude for all of you, domestic and international, coming together, coming to be part of the Harvard Extension School and being with us today and forever. Now you're alumni, you're with us forever, no matter, you can't shake us. So anyway, thank you for indulging me on that comment. A Harvard Extension School, as many of you know, as Ariel said, is dedicated to lifelong learning. And we are situated within the Division of Continuing Education, which also includes the Harvard Summer School, the Institute for Learning and Retirement, and also professional and executive development. So we are deeply committed to this concept of lifelong learning. You can essentially start with us as a 15-year-old in summer school and continue various and sundry through various parts of your life. So we hope that you'll come back. Whether you have one degree with us and you want another, whether you want a certificate, whether you just want to keep taking classes, please come and learn with us and be part of our community, because we're so proud to be able to support you. And one of the things that we're doing right now very actively is really engaging in the future of work to find out how can we do an even better job preparing our students for jobs that don't even exist right now, and figuring out what that might be. And the way that we do that is through connections with organizations around the world, connections with corporations. So if you have someone that we ought to speak to that has a perspective of this, please come find me or members of my team. We'd love to talk to you or anyone about this, because we really want to be, I think we're already on the cutting edge. We want to be even more on the cutting edge of the future work, and are really looking for ideas on how to do that. So without further ado, welcome, welcome, welcome. Congratulations on being an alum, on graduating. And now, without further ado, I will get myself off the stage, and I have the pleasure to introduce today our speaker, and that's Dr. Bobbi Wegner. So Bobbi is one of our most popular faculty members. Many of you are probably here because you heard that Dr. Wegner was going to be our speaker today. And again, I'm not going to read her lengthy bio, but I will give you a couple of highlights. So she's a clinical psychologist. She's a lecturer in human development and education at the Harvard School of Graduate Education, and the CEO founder of Groops, which is an online emotional wellness platform that brings small groups of people together to have guided conversations around their worries and wonders. So you'll hear more about that. But beyond that, she's one of our most phenomenal and successful instructors at the Extension School, and she teaches with us the same class that she teaches at the School of Ed. And that is the most popular Groups and Culture class, which is now in our psychology and IO psych degrees. So we are so thrilled that you are here. Can't wait to hear more about what you're going to say, Dr. Wegner. So without further ado, please let me introduce Bobbi Wegner. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Perfect. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Nancy. That is very generous. Thank you for having me, Ariel, and for Jill and Veronica for inviting me. And for all the students, it's so fun to see many of you in real life. The classes I teach are quite large. They're between 100 and 250 people. And so, and they're virtual and they're global, to Nancy's point. And that's really why I love teaching here, right? It's like I learn more than I probably teach just by being around all of you. So it's absolutely wonderful to be in the same room. So today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, and pretty much like the thing I just double down on and study in all different parts of my life, which is really connection and cohesion. And when you think about this, and we'll talk more about what this really is, but it's how do we come together? It's the fabric between us, right? And it's the relational aspects of kind of being human and what this looks like in all these different domains. But before we get into that, and today, how this will be run is different than just a lecture. Y'all be really bored if I just stand up here for an hour and a half. But as Ariel mentioned, one goal for you all is to start off, you said connection. And so we want you all to connect with each other and walk away feeling like you understand yourself more, you understand each other more, and you have time to actually talk a little bit. So we'll be doing that. Nancy mentioned I'm a clinical psychologist, so I'll tell you a little bit about my story so you can decide for yourself if I, am credible in a space and know anything about this. And if not, you can sort of tune out. But I'm a clinical psychologist by training. So it started off very much how you would think of just a regular therapist, right? Sort of doing therapy. I specialized in clinical health psychology. Medical problems. But the other part of this is really like mindset and stress management, and really looking at the intersection of how you're thinking, what you're feeling, what your behaviors are, and how this impacts how you function and feel. That work started to kind of pull me into executive coaching, and then I sort of morphed my way into organizations. And so I function much more like an organizational psychologist now. If those of you who don't know what organizational psychology is, if you've ever seen Billions, I know the show Billions so Wendy Rhodes, she's like an organizational psychologist. Or if you're more of a Ted Lasso fan and know Dr. Sharon, she focuses on the individual. But picture Dr. Sharon or Dr. Wendy, I do that with teams and organizations. So everything I do is really looking through that lens. How are we bringing people together to optimize how they function and feel? So it's both. That leads me to what I do. Nancy mentioned I founded a company called Groops. We effectively found a way to capture psychologists. They have a lot of downtime in the middle of the day, upskill them in organization psychology, and then sell low-cost subscriptions to organizations across the organization, not just to work with executives, because the way you actually make change within systems is when everybody's included. So it becomes a pricing thing for companies. So how do you do this? We built a platform on the backdrop that looks at the de-identified notes of psychologists, employee surveys, and productivity data, and basically assess levels of connection and cohesion in the workplace, knowing that when we can get the social relationships right, it not only impacts business outcomes like retention, engagement, profitability, but also like health outcomes. So our Surgeon General is very much focused on disconnection and isolation because it widely impacts medical outcomes. But this is really rooted in the idea that we're hardwired for connection, social by nature. And when we can get the social relationships right between us, it just works out better in all these different domains. It just is a matter of like what we're looking at in terms of measuring and studying. I wrote a book called Raising Feminist Boys, How to Talk to Your Kids About Sex, Gender, and Empathy, more out of a passion project. And I'm just super proud to teach at HES. So I teach motivation, which is really teaching people how to use coaching and counseling type skills, motivational interviewing, which is not interviewing at all. It's really a coaching mentality, teaching people how to do that in different domains, not just in the therapeutic world. I teach groups and culture, which is effectively a team psychology type class. How do you bring people together and use a lot of those coaching skills, but focus on teams, building culture from the team level up, really thinking like a therapist, looking at readiness for change, looking at dynamics, like those types of things. I teach applied coaching. So this is fun. People flying to campus and we are together for 4 days, about 8.5 hours a day. Lots of kind of fishbowl practice coaching. Most of these people will probably never really truly be like a practicing coach, but how do you do this in leadership? And then we just got approved, it will kick off next fall, applied team coaching. So it's the same kind of thing. You see the theme here, right? It's teaching people to think like a therapist or a coach in all these different ways, primarily focused on the workplace, knowing that we're living an incredibly disconnected time for a whole bunch of different reasons, not only technology and just different demands from younger generations coming up, but also sort of the socio-cultural climate in which we're in, right? And if we get back to this idea that we're hardwired for connection, social by nature, this creates vulnerabilities across the board for us. So our task is really, how do you bring people together in this evolving landscape and really think about connection strategies? And that's where I spend my time. We also, I'm really excited, just got accepted in a Harvard Institute for Quantitative Social Sciences. So it's out of HBS, but it's really the intersection of, just academics, technologists, VC, really thinking about how do you measure this, and then how do you and then we just get a bunch of support to go deeper around this and try to scale and grow and bring this to people, like hopefully across the globe. So that's a little bit about me and kind of what brings me here. And how we'll spend our time together is really connecting with each other. I first want to help you understand like why we crave deeper connection, where this comes from. How do we build meaningful connection with each other? And why does it really matter, right? So this isn't just a feel-good thing. It does feel good. Like it feels good. Think about when you go to a party and you're like, that was a great conversation. You walk away being like, that was cool. But it actually is much deeper than that. And I just hope you can walk away with some understanding. And then ultimately you'll practice this with each other in a small group too. Any questions about what we're going to be doing here before we start? All right, let's get going. And just quick question, Ariel. Oh yeah. For the subgroup, you're saying? Oh, yeah, we call it connection groups, so everything, but if you're thinking about it from a more of a psychology background, there's different types of groups. This would be more of like a non-educational group, but like in my classes, the way we structure them, there's lecture and then growth groups. And growth groups is both you learn the content, you learn something, but a lot of it's self-reflection and sharing, and knowing that that's really good learning is when you can apply it to yourself. And so this will kind of be like a growth group, live growth group with each other. Awesome. And do we have what time's our hard stop? Is it 10:30 or? Yeah. Okay, so 10:30, okay, cool. All right, so social relationships shape pretty much everything. We don't really think of ourselves this way, but we're hardwired for connection, social by nature. We're effectively like kind of pack animals with clothes on, right? And we don't think of ourselves this way, but we're inherently social beings. Connection matters, but today we're living in one of our most disconnected times, and we're really feeling the impact at home. So one really noticeable thing during COVID was, we saw this uptick in great resignation, quiet quitting, all these things. People were like, I just don't feel great here. And then they were kind of pulling away and applying to different jobs and then having the same kind of feeling. It's because we are kind of backed into this landscape of working together, and there was no strategy around how you're going to actually bring people together to focus on the human parts of the work, right? Jobs typically are really good at looking at the tangible, tactical stuff, the KPIs, how we're going to get there, but not really about like how we're going to do this and what the strategy is to pull the people in, right? And like and when you're not seeing each other in person, we lose those relational touch points. So in the virtual world, you have to start to think about, how am I going to actually structure this in a different way so we can get some of those human connection needs met that we're just learning. We're still in the middle of this, trying to figure it out. So to start, maybe if you could just turn to your neighbor, 1 minute each. We're going to practice what we preach here. What's your name? Either what year did you graduate or what year will you graduate? What brings you here? And maybe just, this can go, so just take a minute each. What's one connection in your life that sort of comes to mind without judging or thinking too much about this, that shaped who you are? We'll get existential really early. Oh. Okay, switch if you have not yet switched. Okay, get ready to come back. Maybe 10 more seconds. All right, let's come back. Sorry to cut you all off. Let's get going. There's good energy. Ready, ready, ready. Hi, everyone. Well, I'm glad you're having lots to talk about. So let's refocus. All right, good. Well, there is a lot of energy in the room, so that's a fantastic sign. But how did that feel? So think about when I said turn to your neighbor. What were you thinking? So when in every moment, right, as humans, there's a thought, there's a feeling, and there's a behavior. This is happening kind of for all of us at all moments. So when I said turn to your neighbor, what was your thought? Were you like, oh God, I haven't had my coffee, or like, I'm excited, right? What was your feeling? And then what did you actually do? So you can think through that lens. You don't have to share all of that. But what was your first reaction? Uh-huh. Good. And did you know each other? Okay, so there's comfort in sort of knowing each other. Great. How about others? Yeah.
It was easy. Just I don't know her.
Yeah.
But just because we say hello at the moment that we're sitting,
Yeah.
it's so easy. So that's okay. Not challenge.
Great.
I also do want to point out something about like the greatest of Harvard. We found out that he's from Bolivia, my mother's from Bolivia, and it's so rare to meet people from Bolivia in this country.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, like right now you just found out?
Yeah.
So if we look at this from like so there was a moment where you said hi that set the stage to make this a little bit easier. And then all of a sudden you have this like shared goal connection thing. And now you probably feel connected to each other and follow up, whatever it is, right? Oh, amazing. Good.
David, yeah,
Hi, David.
he's graduating in
Yay.
July, and I found out he accepted to Oxford.
Whoa. Woohoo.
Yeah, so it's very, very fast.
Oh, amazing. Congratulations. And out of Oxford, there's a really, we partner with them, but this is a sidebar, but you should look these people up. There's a great book. There's a group out of Oxford. They specialize, they have a book. Robin Dunbar is sort of a famous social psychologist. Dunbar number, it's when groups break and what you need to do. So they're very focused on connection cohesion. They're one of our partners. Actually, one of their partners came to HES for any current students. Tracy, who came to class this fall, spring to talk about their work. Have a really good book called Social Brain, but you for sure have to look them up. Super cool, based out of Oxford. Great, great humans. And the books, for people not going to Oxford, the book's a pretty good read too. How about others? What was it like? Yeah.
The whole work from home situation because I have that connection. But I think the most important thing here is that we don't give up faith about the God because we know we have something to offer.
Yeah.
So start from that point that normally we don't know what we're going to encounter on the other side of the conversation. It's easier even for people who are more shy or.
Yeah. Yeah, so that shared goal we're going to talk about, and that's like a question. It's like, how often, how good are you at looking for those shared goals? In a community like this, there's inherently shared goals. You know, you can sort of have that in your back pocket, so to speak. But what do you do when you're not sure, right? And the other thing to think about, we'll talk a little bit about just as humans, is when we walk into rooms, we're consciously or subconsciously scanning, am I safe, do I belong? As humans, we have sort of different foundational needs. One of them's control, one of them's belonging. But our safety is really dependent on, am I safe? Do I belong? Right? If I don't belong, or I don't get the sense that I belong here, you're at risk. Like, so think about if you're walking in the woods and you're kind of like alone and your pack is off, you're literally physically at risk to, attack animals, whatever. But it's not super different in a social environment. So if you're not, so that's why like belonging isn't just like a feel good thing. It's like actually when you can allow people to feel accepted and they belong, they're actually more optimized. So like what ends up happening is when you're not sure if you're safe or you belong, your amygdala is firing in the back of your brain, right? That's your fight or flight response. Our frontal lobes are our higher level thinking, and they're kind of like inversely related. So where our alarm system's on, we go into kind of basic operating mode, and we're not thinking at our highest level because we're like scanning the environment. So when you can increase belonging and help people feel safe, you're actually getting the best out of people from a cognitive level. So it's like really important for all of us to be thinking about belonging cues and how do we help people settle in. And one way is to kind of like look for the shared goal to signal like you belong here, right? We're here together, that kind of thing. But there's a whole like science and psychology of this that we don't really think about when we walk into a room, right? Anyone else want to add here before we keep going? Yeah,
You have a question?
sure.
So 4 years ago, I was put on a PIP at work.
Yeah,
And really changed my life, and I hated the place.
yeah,
I hated the people.
yeah,
And I felt exactly the opposite of what Don made me.
yeah,
And I was like, turned out to be great. I
Yeah.
got another job, made 3 times as much money,
yeah,
remote work, loved it, but made me think about the fact that I feel all these positive things now, but when you don't feel like you belong, like you
Yeah.
said, it can be negative.
yeah,
You can really feel like, I just want to quit. I want to leave.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, welcome to the world. Like that's how so many people feel, right? So it's like that's the thing in psychology. I'm always like, psychology is not rocket science. It's kind of everywhere, but we don't have the language for it. But once you see it, it's kind of like seeing the matrix. You're like, now you actually have levers to push on and like things to execute on. And that's why psychology and organizational psychology is so cool, because like it actually benefits all of us, the employee and the employers, if we can actually figure out how to help people increase connection and cohesion, because they're actually optimized from a business front, retention, engagement, all that improves, but you feel better. You want to come, you feel more committed, you like your people, you feel more purpose driven, and now your loyalty to the brand is going to be much deeper and longer. And so part of this is like, so many people feel that. But a lot of us like kind of don't know why. And then what ends up happening is you kind of feel like something's wrong with you. I'm not saying you feel this way, but I know a lot of people feel that way. And you're like,
Oh, God.
why isn't this working? Versus seeing it as almost like a failure from an organizational perspective, or like bringing people in. Yeah,
Oh, this recording will be shared. That's great.
yeah,
It'll be shared. They're recording it. That's great.
yeah,
We didn't hear it, but I'm. Yeah, you didn't need to do anything. I'm just trying to, just okay. Okay. This was an easy thing. Done. Okay. Yeah. All right.
yeah,
Cool. And there's also a lot of fruit and yogurt.
Like, okay, if you not thinking this, right?
Yeah.
Not growing, like, do you have like statistics on like how much can actually change a team? Maybe like.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like it's really hard to,
yeah,
for me to do like a turnaround in that regard.
yeah.
Is there any numbers who like a manager could really revitalize this team? And I just was wondering if you do that.
Yeah, I know. So yes and no, there's tons of data. This specific thing, I can't answer it. I can tell you about our data. So we're researching this, right? And sort of like, what is the impact? So after we do sort of 6 types of connection groups, like 1-hour virtual meetings, we see increases in retention, belonging, and cohesion between 8 and 18% after 6 hours, right? But when you translate that to dollars for a company, for a company that makes about 100 million ARR, that's about $6 to $8 million per year, right? So that's just like coming together. And we'll talk more about this. I mean, this is pretty much like just what I teach a week. This is a whole years of, but the thing is like getting very clear around shared goals. Like what are the shared goals here of the, really mission, vision, value of the team, not just the organization. What are the norms? So this is where cross-generational stuff comes in. It's not right or wrong. It's like, what are the best norms to help us get what we have agreed that we want to co-create here? And then what are my strengths? So it's all about alignment, and it's like negotiating the social contract. And when you get more alignment on those fronts, everything improves. And we can talk more about it. Happy to like point you in different directions if you're kind of curious about the data. But the other thing to think about if you're like, how do we even think about this? I'm not like their therapist. Like what are professional boundaries? What's like, when is it you just have to do the job, right? Because ultimately we're here just to do the job. But you want to be thinking about like, how do you get the best out of people? And when people feel good, they stay longer too. But there's some line there, right? There's one other thing I was thinking about that, which is, I'll come back to it. I'll think about it. I forgot it now, but it'll come to mind as we're talking. All right, let's keep going here. So the paradox of our time, we're more connected than ever via technology. There's a lot of talk, just even in the AI, think about AI, and people are scared AI is gonna like take our jobs, right? And there's a lot of ways to be more efficient in what we do, which is a great upside. But there's like most organizations, I just wrote an article about this, are not thinking about their connection strategies like alongside AI, right? AI can do a lot for us, and I don't think we need to be scared of it in that way. But you also have to be thinking about how are you going to bring the people together who are there using the technology. 30% of adults report feeling lonely at least once a week, and 10% experience loneliness every day. These numbers are kind of all over the place, honestly. You can look to different sources and find different data. Another one, this is Cigna, is probably, this gets reported everywhere. In 10 people, employees globally have felt lonely, feel lonely at work. That's a huge percent of people, right? So if you think as loneliness is sort of an indicator of disconnection, that means there's a lot of people that are sort of not feeling great about being there, who could theoretically, even if you're only looking from a business perspective, cost a bunch of money to your organization. Knowing replacing people costs between 0.5 and 2x, whatever their annual salary is. The thing I was thinking about is like, these are relational dynamics. And when we kind of get lost in the, like, how does this apply to work? Take it outside of work and just think about, there's not a one size fits all in terms of building a strong relationship with partners, kids, friends, whatever. It just depends on who's kind of involved, right? But there are certain fundamentals like good communication, like values alignment, like open communication, regular, like investing in the relationship. But we don't think of work relationships in the same lens. We're kind of like, just show up and do the thing and be your best. But it's like, no, this is actually, culture is actually relationships at scale, and it evolves over time. Human relationships, there's periods of closeness, there's periods of distance. This is just part of being in a human relationship. Work relationships are not like immune to this, right? So there's periods of like closeness and cohesion, there's periods of distance. And part of this is just talking about it, paying attention to it, moving towards it when there's a problem, and speaking openly and having very clear, like shared mission, shared vision, value sets, and working norms that are like actively talked about. And I want to get you all talking, so I'm going to skip through some of the data, but if you have health conditions, like health and connection are deeply connected. And then on top of this, so all of what I've shared with you so far, just sort of like foundational human connection, cohesion, like ideas. But these particular times are really, really trying right now, right? So as a health psychologist, when you're looking or assessing sort of health and wellness, the lenses in which you look through are biopsychosocial, sometimes spiritual, depending on the person. So what's their health, physical health like? Psychological, sort of like coping and mindsets, like what's the person bringing? And then social is the context in which we're placed, right? So what's the social environment that could be putting pressures on us? And the spiritual part is really much more about purpose. How are we know we're purpose maximizers as humans? How are we, like, it doesn't have to be religion or spirituality, but we do our best when we're committed to a larger purpose, right? And right now there's a lot happening in the world that's challenging much of these things for many of us. And even if you don't feel as personally impacted, the people around you at work do, right? So you just want to be kind of thinking about this. So kind of looking through this lens is particularly important now as people are vulnerable in lots of different ways. And there's an emotional cost, right? We're working with a lot of companies right now, And like the words they're using, high levels of stress, high levels of uncertainty. If I get back to this idea that belonging and control are like kind of fundamental human needs, the sort of levels of uncertainty are just putting us on fragile ground in terms of being able to show up and do the work. And when uncertainty rises, so does fear. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You kind of move down the hierarchy in terms of like being able and willing to show up and do what needs to be done. Anger is also a dominant emotion that's sort of in the public discourse right now. I think there's sort of both like people sort of feel entitled to like step in their position. Doesn't matter where you stand really, but sort of feel entitled to say like, I'm right, and sort of shutting down conversation. It's a very dangerous place to be. We blame rather instead of understanding or moving towards curiosity. And empathy feels scarce, right? So in this climate, human connection is not just nice, it's really a necessity. And I see it as all of our responsibility in terms of like moving this forward, right? And it doesn't mean you have to accept other people's like point of view, but you have to be able to put a hat on and at least like get curious for a moment. And you can take that hat off later if you don't feel like it, but there's a practice of curiosity that needs to happen to kind of move us towards, kind of move the needle. So we're really in this crisis of connection. You know, about 40% of our population experience serious loneliness. It just sounds so dire, doesn't it? It's like, God. Different populations are more vulnerable, younger populations, moms in particular, and mortality risks increase with loneliness. So the Cigna study that I put up before found that, you know, loneliness and isolation is more deadly than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, right? So it's like this really comes back to this idea that we're hardwired connection, social by nature, and when we don't have it, we're vulnerable, not only physically, but you know, kind of in workspaces and in lots of different ways. So we're wired for connection. This increases when we're more connected. Our survival increases, and connection is really predictive of longevity and well-being. And communication is the currency of connection. So just think in your mind when I say like connection, think about like how you define or operationalize that. And feel free to share if you want, but no pressure either. And then think about what cohesion is. And then think about where does like communication fit in with this? Does anyone take a stab at this? It's just like often many of us like sort of kind of know what we're talking about when like we're put, you know, tasked with it. You're like, what is this actually? Yeah, hop in.
In general, that's not like a private or professional communication and connection that connects someone. I always feel it requires show your own vulnerability. And if that's not the ground, it's always going to be difficult because we are so told and modeled into this to present ourselves in a very certain way. I mean, just think about even social media, present our lives as we are. And this is not the way actually to connect with people, and also even in leading positions. Also, if you're not able maybe to show your own vulnerability and also your mistakes, or that it's okay to make mistakes, you are not able really to connect or be even approachable for other people. So I think that's maybe a very big challenge, and I think it connects also to the sense of belonging, that even if you present yourself in a certain way, then it's gonna be still always very difficult, to know where you belong. So if you don't really, if you're not able to be authentic.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. So it just, you know, I think what you're saying is vulnerability is like a key component of this, and like where does that fit in, even in the professional and the personal realm? It's probably, and it is, there's a great book, and if you took my groups and culture class, we read it. It's called Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, and he basically researches all these different organizations and boils down like key factors in high cohesion, high performing teams. If you don't want to read the whole book, there's like videos online that you can shortcut it, but vulnerability is one of these things. And you're like, what does that even look like in the workplace? Like, do I show up and tell you all about my like marital problems. That feels weird. I don't know if that's gonna like help anyone here. But like, what does that look like? But he really talks about creating a culture of fallibility, saying like, I screwed that up. So the leader's responsibility to kind of go first. And you're modeling a culture of fallibility, which allows you to connect with each other in a more human way. But on the other hand, from a business operations, you actually move faster. When you can create a culture like that, now you're not guessing. There's data on the table faster to operate on. So it's actually correlated with operational speed. But when we think about this idea of vulnerability, it's really, what it really means is to be at risk. Who wants to like expose themselves to be at risk? And so you have to build this environment of like habits of mutual risk taking where you kind of do it together. And that's where trust is built. But this is a cool thing about org psych is that you boil down all these factors and like vulnerability is like one whole study. You know what I mean? We're not talking about it today, but look up the vulnerability loop by Daniel Coyle online. And this is like the base of a strong culture. Someone generally goes first, either the leader or a more extroverted person might signal a sense of vulnerability. Like, oh God, it was a rough weekend, my kid was sick, something like that. What ends up happening, either someone catches the vulnerability and says, yeah, that's hard too, I hate when my kids are sick. And then the person who initially shared says like, thanks for sharing. And now there's a bit of a loop, a back and forth. That over time becomes a culture. What the worst thing can happen is when that person B doesn't actually respond. We've all been in those environments where you sort of say something and the person doesn't respond. You're like, well, that was awkward. I'm never going to do that again. But that kind of kills the culture from day one, right? So if you've been in those moments and you've missed it, it's not really a missed moment. You still can come back and say, hey, listen, like, thanks for sharing that yesterday, you know? But that's how you sort of build those loops. Daniel Coyle really, really studies that. Yeah, anxiety. And so anxiety and OCD are like really diagnostic categories, kind of that would almost move over towards like mental health. But the way I would conceptualize this in like the professional, and there's we could have a whole conversation like around like how do leaders navigate this? What do you even say? What are signs and symptoms of mental health? How do you keep a professional and refer out? That's like a whole other kind of talk. If you have specific concerns, happy to talk to you offline about that. But the way we contextualize it here would be more around like stress, worry, uncertainty. Those are the words that are kind of all over the place in the workplace. And those are almost like, not all stressed people are going to turn into anxiety or, you know, but a lot of that goes unaddressed, kind of chronic long-term stress can morph into anxiety. And that's a different kind of problem. So for today's purpose, we're not really going down that path, but I would think about stress as a natural, we all feel stress at times, but it's sort of for how long, intensity, duration, frequency. How big is this? Do you ever have breaks in it? And if the answer is like no, then you probably have a bigger problem here that you have to think about from a kind of structural perspective. It's an organizational problem. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel a sense of psychological safety.
Yeah.
My MBA training, you know, and doing that, but I found that dogs are really helpful. I've got 2 dogs.
Oh, nice.
They
Yeah.
really make me feel amazing. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on like the loneliness perspective.
Yeah.
Or something like that, and have 2 dogs.
Yeah.
Is that different for that demographic if you want pets?
Like, what are the outcomes for people with pets, basically? I have no idea, but it's like the one thing I know is important is unconditional positive regard. And so like when a big part of what I focus on is teaching leaders how to coach, because we have to teach leaders how to coach for connection and cohesion, because most people get put in a leadership role and they don't know how to do that, right? But one of the fundamental things when is unconditional positive regard. Doesn't mean you agree with the behavior. It means you know, I care for you as a human. I'm like, there's nothing you could really do that would make me not like you. So there's an art of holding that and also holding the expectations of the. Okay, let's keep going because we're on slide like 3 and it's halfway done. Okay, so understanding yourself really matters. Everything I do, you can apply a lot of this from an individual or in the classes I teach, motivation really focuses on sort of leaders and individuals. And the applied coaching class is really sort of individual. And then the groups and culture and the team coaching are teams or groups of people. Okay, so, and where I spend most of my time in groups world outside of HES is focusing on teams and organizations. So I look through the lens of like groups. Understanding yourself really, really matters. So if you've been in any of my classes, this is very like a psychology lens. When I used to train psychologists who were kind of newly graduated, and it's self, other, space in between. What am I bringing to any dynamic, whether I'm chatting with Nancy here, it's like I'm bringing something, she's bringing something, and then there's a space in between that creates whatever vibe or social context, the context of it. That's true if you're at Starbucks or you're in your marriage or talking to your kid. Self, other, space in between. So the job is to always be like, what does this feel like? How connected are we in this moment? What am I bringing? What are they bringing? And how are we intersecting? So as psychologists, you're kind of just rapid fire doing this like at all moments. And if you're a leader and really focus on connection, cohesion, you're like, how connected, how cohesive is this? What am I bringing? What are they bringing? And what's the space in between? And groups bring out, there's another great psychologist, Boston-based. If anyone knows internal family systems, it's this idea that we all have different parts. And when we're in relationship with each other, like, you all are seeing my academic part, right? If I was at home, I was at my daughter's soccer tournament last night on the Cape Cod, like that's more my parenting part, right? Or I could have a part of me that's like more anxious versus when I'm talking to a VC, right? Those are different parts of me that are getting called out in relation to the person in front of me. And so you want to start to know what your kind of habits are around what parts often come out. So in social groups, these are common roles, okay? Doesn't mean these aren't just sort of like one size fits all, but these are common roles we see in groups. There's like the organizer. This is Charlotte, for those of you who have taken our class, who just got an award, by the way, for being like just an amazing TA. No surprise, but the organizer keeps things on track. The talker leads with energy, speaks easily, shares first, that's often me. The thinker, so processes quietly, the sort of insightful person. The connector, who's really good about pulling people together. The listener, who's sort of taking it all in. The challenger. The other thing with connection and cohesion, it doesn't mean we're all in agreement. Actually, a sign of a strong group or strong team is when there's high levels of or like divergent thinking. That's why diversity matters here. When people bring different ideas, it's very correlated with innovation. We don't grow things with like all thinking the same. So you need to create a group when there's like different people with different ideas. And so oftentimes there's a challenger who's kind of pushing that, right? And then the supporter who's like affirming or encouraging. So just think when you look at this list, I'm sure you're already doing this, but like, who are you kind of? What role do you sometimes fall into? And just hold that for a sec. But all of us experience, like, it's just common for us to have a fear of rejection, not know how to move beyond small talk. There's a really good study by the American Psychological Association, and it's like we crave deeper connection with strangers, but we don't know how to get there. And it's something about small talk, but it's like how to get beyond small talk, where we're generally speaking not great at that. Creating psychological safety, this word gets a lot of press. Amy Edmondson from the business school, she sort of coined this and studies this. What this really means is like being willing to speak up without fear of shame, judgment, or criticism. So you have to have high levels, like psychological safety, sort of ground zero in terms of like high cohesion, high performing teams, right? You have to be willing to like put ideas out on the table to be able to perform well, right? And then the power of curiosity and open-ended questions is sort of like the how you do this. So I'm giving you this like rapid fire sort of lecture on all these different concepts that we literally teach over the year in 4 different classes, but we'll do the best we can. But just thinking about, given the role you usually play, what barriers do you notice in yourself? You don't have to answer it out loud, but just notice in yourself, like when you turn to each other at the beginning, what was like the first thought you had? That's probably a pretty good indicator of some of those internal narratives. That might be a block, right? But curiosity can help. And this is where coaching comes in. So for those of you who took the motivation class or applied coaching, I mean, you're probably so tired of hearing about ORs, but we're going to spend a few moments on it today. And it's really open-ended questions. and it's hard. It's an art. You can read about it. It's like makes logical sense. And then when you go to do it, we just sort of often ask closed questions and it kind of ends the conversation. You want to create space for authenticity. Think about even for yourself, like what is authenticity? This is another one of these words that like we all kind of know what it means, but I'm like, how do you define it? It's sort of hard. From a health psych perspective, it's when what we're thinking, feeling, saying, and doing are in alignment. Of course, we can't all show up to all of our spaces and be 100% in alignment at all moments, but you want to start noticing when am I in alignment and when am I not, right? When am I thinking and feeling something but not sort of allowed to say it, right? Those are sort of inauthentic moments. We can't always be in authenticity, but it's like something we want to strive for. And silence can be a powerful tool, right? It can be a weapon or a tool, but oftentimes we fill gaps, like in teams or in groups, but it shuts down conversation, kind of blocks other people from sharing. It can also be a weapon when you use it as sort of to kind of punish people, which we don't want to do. But think about, like, in general, how curious are you with people? You know, just think when you turn to each other, like, you don't have to say this out loud, but from 0 to 10, how curious really are you? And how curious are you, especially during challenging times, right? Sometimes you just don't even want to listen. You're like, I just don't even have time for you. But you can practice something called OARs. And so we talk a lot about this in class too. People are like, God, this is hard to like always do this. You can literally put this hat on and practice it for 10 minutes and then go back to being, you know, closed off and grumpy if that's like kind of what you want to do, right? But I just sort of encourage you to try this at least. So connection and understanding can be deepened by using a framework called OARs. OARs is asking open-ended questions, what and how questions. Why is an open-ended question, but can come off as like a little judgy if you're like, why did you do that? So I just sort of caution, be careful with that. But like, how did you get there? Or like, what made you like sort of think about that? Or help me understand like, you know, how you came to that decision. So semantics really, really matters. And these are questions that are basically like digging down to help get to the root. It's either the root value or the thought that the person's having. We can practice this. I literally think of it as just sort of like excavating. You're just getting like closer and closer to the sort of the foundational thought. Affirmations is really, if you've ever been in therapy and you're gonna be like, I know what my therapist is doing now. Affirmations sort of like empathizing and validating. Like I can see how that made sense for you. It doesn't mean you agree with the behavior. You know, like think about parenting. This is really helpful. You could say like, you know, you're like, I can see how that made sense for you. People generally do behaviors that are functional, right? We do things that make sense to us in our mind. They just don't make sense to like people outside of our mind. So to empathize and validate, you're like, okay, I can see how that made sense given like your past experience. It doesn't mean you agree with behavior. Reflective listening. This is like super skill. If you just say back what you think you're hearing, it like the person goes deeper. And it's really not super hard. And it feels like you're doing something that's like, they're going to sort of know. I practice this with each other. But it's like, say I said, oh yeah, like this weekend was really hard with my kid was sick. I said, oh, this weekend was really hard. Your kid was sick, huh? They're like, oh my God, yes. And then we didn't sleep and da, da, da. And then they keep going. So just, you're acting almost like a mirror. And there's a whole neuropsych reason why this, you know, kind of works. But people end up going deeper when you do this. And all of a sudden you're going deeper and deeper and deeper into understanding each other. And then summarizing is, it's a way to sort of summarize the whole story. So it sounds like your kid was sick. It sounds like you didn't get a lot of sleep. It sounds like now you're annoyed at your husband and now you're behind in work. That's really important because it allows you to sort of fact check. So there's two things. When you do that, the person feels like incredibly heard. So that increases belonging. You're like, wow, you're really listening to me. It's quite novel actually these days to feel really listened to. But also, if you got something wrong, it allows you to kind of course correct. So in the organizational lens, like a lot of dysfunction happens out of miscommunication. So it allows you to kind of fact check along the way and then course correct before you're down a path and somebody's doing something that like doesn't matter. Vulnerability is a superpower here. You know, I'm not going to go into all of this just for time's sake. Self-disclosure is a part of being vulnerable, but it's not just self-disclosure for the sake of self-disclosure. Literally, a psychologist is trained to be like, all right, like for what purpose? Why am I going to share this? Is it going to serve the group or the individual? Or am I just offloading because I'm like worried right now? So anytime you're going to share something, you're like, all right, for what purpose? And it should be to like for the betterment of the group when you're the leader and you're like standing in that role. But think about how vulnerable are you, right? People are all over the place. This is very much shaped by lots of different things like sex, gender, culture, messaging from our parents. What does vulnerability mean? You know, if we know this is sort of a superpower, not right or wrong, but just sort of ask yourself like, how okay am I with this, right? And is this something I need to grow into? Connection across differences. This is where people feel the highest sense of belonging, not super surprising. But a lot of this is because there's common, clear goals here, which somebody else brought up earlier. So when you're in different communities where there's sort of unknown, clear common goals, you want to be thinking like, how often am I actually sort of hunting for the common goal? You know, how do I ask these questions and sort of like looking for them? But when we can do this, connection can really transform communities. We move, we move from sort of me to we. We don't have to do this at all moments. But HEAA from the Danish tradition is really, really good at this, kind of practicing being in the we, even when there's sort of, you go to a family event and you're like, I'm not going to say anything that's going to like disconnect us. I'm going to really focus on the group for the next 2 hours. This can be a practice, right? It doesn't have to be like, we're not asking you to be sort of perfect people. But when you can practice stepping from the me to we, it's sort of an art and a practice that kind of chips away at this disconnection that we're all feeling. So just think for yourself, when have you seen connection transform people in groups? You know, I didn't mention this, but it was like connection sort of like you're at a party of like a great conversation. You're like, I like that person. There's sort of one thread of connection or relationship between us that's kind of vulnerable. That person could say something that bothers me and that thread breaks. Cohesion's like layers of connection over time. That's the thing that's really correlated with high cohesion, high performing teams, and that allows you to stay together during the bumpy times. That's why it's kind of correlated with retention and engagement, but it's layered connection that allows you to like stay focused on a shared goal despite these sort of ruptures that happen along the way. So think about, and we're going to break into group for a minute and do a little bit of a shorter exercise. But just, think about, you're here together. Connection is one of your core things that's sort of important today. Think about what you've learned. How can you go in today, like with this learning, and what do you want? What's a goal for yourself, right? Everybody probably has different goals here, but if you're really looking through the lens of connection and today, what does that look like for you? What's your connection intention and what's your like commitment for this event? And we can share that at the end. Maybe if anyone brave soul wants to share out. But before we do that, let's break you into just, kind of, you can form your own groups and maybe just take a shorter amount of time, like we're like 10 minutes. And I'm going to put up a couple questions, but I want you to practice ORs, asking open-ended questions. Try to ask 2 questions before you make a statement. A what or how question, and then try to make a reflective statement. Just see what it feels like. I'll put ORs back up. But one person can kind of take the lead, or you can kind of do it. I think I would just jump into prompt number 1. What's your default style in groups? And what would need to happen to stay curious? Yeah, I'll put the styles up and just think about, so maybe your name, what your default style is, and then knowing your style, what do you need to do to stay curious and open-minded here? And try to ask each other these questions. Okay? Is this clear? We're good? So just kind of, pick small, it's a little hard, but if people can move around and just get in sort of smaller groups of 5 to 6 or 7.
Grayson, I'm on a phone call. What's up? No. That's LeBron's kid. Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay. Thank you. Take about 2 more minutes. Okay, get ready to wind down. Start to summarize if you can. Okay, start to summarize. All right, why don't we come back to the group? If you've summarized, you're winning. If you haven't, try to summarize a little bit. All right. Let's come back together. So what was that like for you? What did you learn? What were your takeaways? Without sharing people's like personal stuff, you know, just be careful about that. But what did you learn? Yeah.
People that don't really easily connect with others.
Okay. Oh, wait, hold on. Everyone, what's your name? Oh, sorry. What's your name?
I can't answer now.
No. Oh, Don speaking, everyone. We got to listen. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Connecting with others, like connecting with silicon-based life forms.
Yep.
But having a couple of open-ended questions in your pocket and And when you meet strangers, just
Yeah.
pulling them out and teeing up an open-ended question. And then Jacob helped me understand that then kind of affirming and connecting with something in their response. It's amazing how you can feel that connection building quickly.
Yeah, there's like like, not to sound like dirty but there's like a strategy to this, right? That helps deepen connection. You just learn a few of these basics. And we work with tech companies a lot, Don. Like, I'll tell you a funny story. We're working with this sort of fast growing automotive tech company. Their tech development team was in Serbia. But in Serbia, there were Russians, Croatians, Serbians, all effectively 20 to 24-year-old tech bros from Eastern Europe, right? They're like, hey, can you work with our tech development team? We're like, let's give it a go. So I flew over to Serbia, have one of our group guides, who's a TA, Galia, for those of you who, she lives in Bulgaria, she came with me. And we were biking around like sort of Serbia with all these like Eastern European tech bros, like basically doing this on like riverside banks. And it was so powerful and awesome just to give them a little bit of a structure around like, how do you do this? Because they were literally sitting in the office sending each other like communications side by side. They weren't like turning, they're just like, Kenyo, you didn't send me that thing yet. And we're like, this is just breaking connection, cohesion all over the place, right? So how do you actually have the skills and understand? And the CTO of the organization, he was from Russia. He got sort of brought in to lead this team. And he pulled me to the side and he said, Bobbi, like, what's the science behind this? Like, I've been taught my whole life to basically not listen to Americans in this way and to actually have my guard up. Like, so it was like a bit of a, he was being really honest. He wanted to know the data around this because it was so against the grain of how he had sort of learned how to think about this, right? So the other part of this is you have to place this in a cross-cultural context. I'm coming in as, you know, an American woman thinking this is sort of fun and all the things, but really like, how are you going to talk the talk of the people that you're working with to help them apply it and integrate it in the way that makes the most sense for them, right? Versus me saying like, this is the way we do it. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, how about others?
Very hesitant to ask him, like, you know, because I grew up in Kenya for in East Africa for a very long time. So I thought maybe the gentleman had to be something back, but I was very scared to ask him.
Uh-huh.
And then during conversation, as I was listening, he brought up the point that, hey, I'm Zimbabwe, I'm this organizational school that we're running in Zimbabwe. And then, like, you know, it clicked, okay, yeah, we do business in Zimbabwe. So what I learned is that sometimes, like, you know, if I never hesitated to ask that question, I would have probably got to that point of conversation quicker rather than hoping that, you know, maybe he'll bring out that point and then we'll reach that. So I would have missed this entire conversation just because I was scared to ask him that, hey, like, do you have any East African background and can we vibe on that?
Yeah. Yeah. And what was the fear for you?
Fear was that, like, you know, maybe he's from America and he's not marketing, he might get offended. The other fear was he might wonder, why am I asking that question? Like, you know, things of that nature, and that's why I was being hesitant, like, being more reserved. And I felt like I shouldn't have. I should have just spoken up well.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing that and going, kind of putting it out there. And like, I think we all have that. A lot of this, and we know at least from org psych too, Harvard Business Review has a great article about this. This is more about giving feedback in the workplace. That like, we don't give enough feedback. We don't ask those questions, not because it's because you don't want to hurt people's feelings, you don't want to be offensive, like that kind of thing that sort of blocks the communication. But so much is lost in that. So there's a way to actually move towards that. And when we use sort of authenticity or that curiosity, you can hold both at once, right? Like this is Dick Schwartz work. You can have competing feelings. So it's like, you know, I'm really curious about you, but there's questions I have that like, I'm a little unsure about asking you. Once a person, most often, 99% of the time, person like, of course, ask me. Now they've consented. So now it's like a different dynamic versus just making assumptions. You know what I mean? So there's like an art of like doing this that allows you to say what you're thinking and feeling withholding the fact that like, you don't want to be offensive. You're coming at this from a good place. You're trying to do the thing, and then allows a person to kind of like consent in, which kind of neutralizes the power sort of it or the weirdness of it. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
So in our group,
yeah,
a lot of us really are kind of connectors. They really like other people to be happy.
Yeah.
And particularly when somebody says something or asks a question, it's really great if you say, oh, that was a really good question.
Uh-huh.
So, Bobbi, will you tell me that right now?
You want me to tell you that? What a great question. Good, thanks for raising your hand. And, it's true, right? To be like, that's a really great question. There's a little bit of a caveat there, though. Like, so in motivational interviewing, I would say yes, 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 yes. Like, do that because you're encouraging, especially in a new group. That's a good group behavior that you, as the leader or facilitator, you're kind of like reinforcing, right? Like, oh, like question asking is a behavior that we want to see more of. So we're going to call attention to it. So as a leader, as you're doing this, you want to be looking for good group behaviors. Same thing if you're potty training your kid. Good job, like going on the potty. Like, it's not super different in different social environments. You look for the behaviors, you've operationalized it, and now you're reinforcing it through words. The one thing is when you're in a one-on-one coaching, this is much more of a strict like coaching model. When you say like, that is good, you're placing a value on it, right? So it's like, well, what if you didn't ask a question? Is that not good? Or, so in a team setting, you would say that because you want people to encourage that. But there's something called, it's Gordon's rule, roadblocks. And it's like, no advising, no value, like kind of judgment. That's a really true coaching mentality when you hold neutrality. I don't think anything's good or bad here. I'm like, anything's sort of okay. That's less true in a work environment. So your question is still a good question. How about others? Yeah.
So for us, we're all like awesome connectors. And what I know is that we're all
Mm-hmm.
and then like somehow, somewhere, like we all had a chemistry, and our unifying goal is to make a lot of money here.
Yay. You know what? So when we work with companies and we talk about values, money is the one no one wants to talk about. I'm sitting with these like executives of like big companies, and you can take a free online values test. You can get them off Amazon. Their card sets are widely overpriced, like $50 or something. But there's a great exercise where you have everyone name their core values. And then you at least know the value sets that are sitting on the team that allows you then to set the values of the team or like know the players a bit. Money is the one no one wants to talk about because it feels like you shouldn't feel that way. Money is so much deeper. For most people, it's about like security or caretaking or things like that. So I appreciate you guys like actually talking about it, right? And being like, money has value here. And like, it's not something we have to shy away from. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, money, I used to teach at Hugsy, like, now I teach groups and culture there, but I started off here at Harvard about 8 years ago as a teaching fellow in group counseling, cross-cultural counseling. And cross-cultural counseling, we did a whole thing on SES. Nobody wants to talk about money if you have it or you don't have it, so everyone just stays away from it, where there's a lot of value in actually just bringing to the table around like feelings around it, because it's kind of sitting in every space,
during grad school, especially at healthcare. Healthcare people do talk about money because it helps people stay like, we as nurses or as doctors kind of need to make sure that we're all getting about the same amount in situation environment based on what our work is. Now in business, people really don't talk about money, as you mentioned. You mentioned like these executives, VPs, and it's because these VPs or executives are making $1 million a year, and they might be going to the office 12 hours a week or doing whatever they please their leisure time. Whereas people, oh, I'm a paralegal working 60 hours a week, and I'm only getting $90,000. So it really seems for business there's so much of an upside and downside versus how many hours you work based on your pay and whatnot. So it can be kind of like frustrating to talk about money. Where healthcare, we all kind of have to be like, hey, we need to keep pushing the envelope, stay together as a team. So let's talk about money. I just want to put that.
Yeah, put it out there.
It's not, no one talks about money. It's just industry.
It's hard to talk about money when you're making different amounts of money. So I think if we get back to this idea that we want to be part of a group, it's easier to talk about things when there's like similarities. But money is one of these demographics that like are sitting in the room, right? So it's like, even if we're not going to talk dollars, there's feelings around feeling valued that go along with money. So if you're the person who's making 90,000 and your boss is making $500,000, there's dynamics there, but it's like, and there's a way to talk about value and like recognition that's tied to money versus like, this is how much money I'm making versus you. But it's there, it's in every kind of space that can deepen connection and cohesion when you match, the words match what we're all thinking and feeling, and we can actually talk about it, versus it's sort of the elephant in the room that's breaking connection and cohesion. So that's like, you know, you have to be very thoughtful about how you do this, and it's sort of, yeah, to your point, industry specific, and what does this even look like? Not a like, I'm not encouraging all of you to go into work on Monday and start talking about how much money you're making, but like just something, one variable that's in the room, whether or not you're thinking of talking about it or not. I know we're coming towards the end of time. Oh, question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah. So if you're kind of in like a coaching, it sounds more of like a coaching or maybe a friend, not necessarily at work, or yeah. Yeah. So when you're taking a coaching mindset, it's not about answering the question. Most of us try to help each other by giving advice or answering questions. But it's like coaching is really based on this idea that I trust that you can get to the answer yourself. And you use these questions that where it's like, well, what makes you feel that way? You know, and then the person says something, so I could see how you might think that. It can feel uncomfortable, like you're agreeing that God's not going to love you or something, but you're actually just helping them think through their own framework. And your job as a coach is not to convince them. No one's going to listen anyway. People nod their head and say yes, but it's not going to change anything. So when you're putting this hat on, you're creating space for them to explore their own thoughts and feelings. And there's different ways of doing this in terms of like depth, basically, if you're in like a coaching therapeutic space versus leading someone in an organization versus a friend. And a lot of what like comes up in my classes are like, well, I'm using this when I'm talking to my friend, but can I coach? I'm like, well, you're not really the coach. You're just a good friend who's like, knows how to use this framework. Yeah.
So I struggle a lot with the silos of organization.
Yeah.
I work with a big company, 100,000 employees, and I work with a lot of engineers, like Don was saying, technical
Yeah.
folks, and they're very much focused on problem solving.
Yeah.
And their title is engineer, and they take pride in that. They talk about their engineering powers and how they're smart and intelligent. And then on the other side, you got the MBAs, and their title says account manager, cost manager, and they have to make tough decisions. They have to make decisions about budget, allocation, CPI, metric KPI. And when you have to make decisions. Who do we hire? Where do we allocate capital? Stuff like that. And it's hard to bring them together. You go to the chief engineer, MIT, PhD, hey, we need this person, and they just shut down.
Yeah.
You open up the budget, it becomes political. They start talking about, oh, you know, I want to talk about the sky. I want to talk about the car, the world is destroyed, you know, the stock price is down. And you're like, we need to make a decision. And you put them in meetings over and over again, trying to get them to be realistic and not be a Benjamite, and that, you know, we have to maximize money and budget and value. But it's really hard to get them to talk. So what do you do in a situation like that where someone has the word MBA next to their name, the other person is an FE or something like that, and kind of break those silos of cross-functionality?
Yeah. Yeah. So cross-functional teams are like 75% of the time dysfunctional, pretty much because of this, right? So it's like really hard. So like the mission, vision, values of the organization are really important because that becomes like the guiding light around why we're doing what we do. And then really appreciating that everybody has their own skill set here, right? So part of it is like always coming back to this mission, vision, values, and then breaking down. So right now, this is like a theme I'm seeing a little bit. There's a lot of like kind of scaling health companies where there's clinicians kind of joining like a tech platform, but then there's like the business PE people who are like, these are our KPIs, you got to get it done. And they're like, but we're saving the world and we're bringing attention around women's health issues to everybody. So there's like a friction there that breaks like connection and cohesion. So like, it's really important for these groups to come together and be like, what are we doing here? What's your part? What's my part? like actually talking about the value they can each bring, and then creating regular opportunities to kind of like come together. That's not going to happen in one-off workshop. That's basically why we built the company we did, because it's like, people are like, well, we'll do a half-day conference. Like, that's not going to solve anything. This is ongoing conversations, bringing people from different silos together with some structure, really hardcore focused on like the shared goals and the KPIs, and then asking good questions to deepen understanding around the value sets people. But that happens all over the place, and it really comes back to shared goals, how we're going to get there, curiosity about the other, asking these questions, and then measuring not only like the business KPIs, but the cultural KPIs. So like, how are we functioning as a team? Do I feel good being here? Do I feel valued? Do I feel like we can communicate? So it's a whole thing, but it's really, really important to make organizations function. I know we should probably end, we're, a few minutes over, but just think, what's just as you kind of close. So if we're going to do a little bit of a summary, we really started off talking about disconnection, connection in trying times, and how you can use psychology and question asking and this coaching framework, really appreciating that like what you're feeling, we all kind of feel, and it's sort of our responsibility to really think about how can you practice this, right? Like we kind of want everyone else to solve these problems. And especially in this kind of environment, it can feel very disempowering. So like, what are something you can do to kind of move the needle in terms of curiosity and connection, knowing that it has like huge ripple effects when we practice that? So what's one thing you're taking away from today? What shifted and how you're thinking about connection? And what's the tool you're ready to practice? Maybe we'll share if anyone has a couple things or takeaways. Yeah.
People buy into people more than kind of that's out the window, and all we have is that huge connection. So it's like just things for yourself. I think it's great to like have those questions. It feels more inauthentic when I have something I'm feeling, thinking, want to say, and I'm not saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Like something I'm fighting inside. But when you find like a sense of like comfort, this genuine connection, I think that's easier to break.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, like who we are should matter more.
Mm-hmm. Wow, it's like poetic, like amazing, but it's so true. It's like taking risks, right? Like putting yourself out there. We said when we set group norms within our teams, it's say what you're thinking, or if anyone's in my class, we put group norms up every single class, right? And it's say what you're thinking and feeling, and like try to be brave and put words to the feeling, and like create the environment. The other norms are like the sort of unconditional positive regard. People are going to say things that are going to bother you, but when you feel that way, ask a question, right? So you got to like put those parameters around people and give them permission so you can take risk and then not, have that vulnerability sort of ruptured. Yeah, any other takeaways?
Yeah, implicit bias is not inherently negative.
Yeah.
About, the accuracy of my socialized decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And being open to being wrong, good place for growth, but also being open to being right.
I love that. Yeah, it's like we all get sort of uncomfortable when we bring up like bias or stereotypes. But what we have to think about is we're hardwired, like because we walk in environments, we're assessing, am I safe, do I belong? We take prior information, whether it's right or wrong, and make assumptions about people because our brains optimize for efficiency. So we make bad decisions and assumptions at all moments. But if we can just assume we're all doing that and find a little bit of courage to kind of like challenge yourself, what am I bringing to this? What's the other person bringing? What's the intersection between us? It allows us to have those conversations, right? We're all biased. That's part of being human because this is how we actually get through the day. And if we're actually truly making evidence-based decisions at every moment, we would be so slow, right? Because there's just not enough time. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
I think my biggest takeaway from this session is that don't hesitate to ask open-ended questions because I feel like sometimes in the setting I hesitate to ask open-ended questions because I think my biggest fear is that maybe asking questions makes me look stupid sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I hesitate to ask the questions, but I think that's the biggest takeaway for me. Don't hesitate to ask questions and be curious. Because like other folks share, like when you ask a question, you may have more interesting stories, but you hesitate to ask, eventually you miss the very interesting.
Yeah. And if you remember, people want to belong. So think of this idea like people walk away from conversations. I used to work with people who have social phobia. I'm like, literally just like lob the ball back to the person with a question because people are like, wow, that was a great conversation after the other person's just talked about themselves for 10 minutes. People just are like, wow, feel really good. They don't even notice you're really asking the question, but it's like a way to help people feel like they're really seen. And at the end of the day, we just want to feel like we're seen and where we belong. Good, yeah.
I think the key takeaway that I had started with you always talk about who we stand for and what we stand for as members of our we just really have responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. I agree with you completely, right? We can all do work here and take these little steps, like literally moment by moment, and then like create those spaces for people and then know very clear, at least like our, you know, our shared value sets here around what we stand for is really, really impactful, right? And empowering versus feeling like we can't do anything. Good. Anything else? So I'm happy to connect. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on all the things. My email's there. Love connecting with people. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. More takeaways. Keep coming. Yeah.
These kind of audience participations are great.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Well, thank you for participating. So much more fun for me when people engage. And part of why I really love teaching at HES and why I'm here is because I learn, right? The coolest thing is people are working in all different capacities. And I'm like, walk away energized and feel with like new learnings, just even though I'm like the instructor. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
However, you know, in our current political administration, they're kind of get rid of the belonging and inclusion portion, and honestly, diversity and equity as well. How do you, with a PhD in psychology, how do you view this? Like,
Yeah. Like, where are we?
Yes. That,
Yes.
it was kind of going for some future, and now you know, I don't have a PhD. I'm seeing it we're kind of regressing, but
Yeah.
I would like your
Yeah. So everything I look through is a lens of connection cohesion, right? Diversity is just part of this. And so like think about who, or we probably don't like know, but I'll tell you a bit about like kind of who we sell into our companies. We target large enterprises like Blue Cross, Optum, Finesta, the Air Force, those type of things, all the way down to scaling tech companies. Disconnection, lack of cohesion are universal problems. And then for us as a company, it's basically how do we scale fastest by picking different targets. That's just to give you a context of who I'm talking to. These are not like psychologists, squishy people who want to talk feelings. They're like, help our company save money and like perform better, right? And so when we talk about things like disconnection, it feels very emotional. And people are like, how is that going to serve my company? Why should I spend my dollars here? You have to know your audience and know the impact. So even when we're working with companies that aren't necessarily the most progressive, when we focus on cohesion and bringing people together, now they can see that impact in terms of business. So you have to know the statistics around things like retention, profitability, all of that tying, and that's really what we're measuring. So, you know, the company, for our company side, we're measuring this from productivity data, from self-report. Now we're building tech to be able to grab behavioral indicators from things like Slack to look at like communication patterns and then draw clearer ROI. So the point is, connection cohesion are very much tied to business outcomes. So you have to know your audience and who you're kind of selling to help them understand the why. But connection and cohesion, like diversity is just part of having a high cohesive, high performing team. That's where innovation comes from, diversity of thought, but you can't just put people in a room and not actually bring them together because they're gonna leave, right? So that's where like the belonging.
they might stay for a longer period of time and they might even say, you know, I love my coworkers, the job is that great, but I'm gonna stay here because of coworkers.
That's it.
Sometimes the pay might not be that glorious, but it's like team I work with, I don't want to replace them, so.
That's 1,000%. And like, this is a whole other talk, I won't bore you with that, but it's like the way industry is set up, we've historically reinforced, like if we give more money, they'll stay longer. We know that's not true. People are purpose maximizers. So if you can get the people part of this right, connect it with the larger purpose, get the stickiness between the people, the tactical stuff matters. And you have to make enough money, but it's not the ultimate driver. And companies don't think this way, generally speaking. COVID's sort of helping change that a little bit in younger companies, but it's still like an evolving thing. Yeah, should we probably end? Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Connect with me. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jill. You are amazing.
All right. Isn't she incredible? Truly. Thank you. Thank you so much, Bobbi. I just want to give a logistical update. And for those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Jill Felicio. I'm Director of Advancement here and grad from 2000 and 2013. So it's so great to see so many friends and new friends to come. We're going to have a great day. We're going to take a quick break. There are some kind of new snacks outside, so feel free to refresh, use the bathroom, and come on back. We're going to have Amanda Peters up next. One resident message here is belonging, and we are a family, and there is a lifetime of support that this division provides. So we're going to hear more on that and build on this theme of connection and cohesion as we move forward. So please enjoy the conversation, and thank you, Bobbi. Incredible.
Yeah.